Okay, cool. So I just finished Helicobacter pylori and the gastrointestinal system. This one, I jumped straight down to the first question again. I saw what is the most likely sequelae, I think is how you say that, sequelae, in generating the decreased luminal pH following the destruction of antral D cells in H. pylori infection. So I have no idea what antral D cells are. So I had to start, treating this like it's the MCAT because that's what it is. So what is the most likely sequelae in generating the decreased luminal pH? So I have to think that means what's going to happen if you decrease pH in the lumen of the stomach following the destruction of antral D cells. So that tells us that D cells probably keep the pH balanced or keep it up or something like that. They're doing something to cause the pH to not start nosediving. So you destroy D cells, pH goes down. So what's the likely sequelae? Okay, so then when I looked at the answers, that's right. Looked at the answers, I saw, okay, so sequelae, they're talking about like what is the path that's going to happen. So this is the one I got wrong. I got the other four correct, except this one I did not know. This is like I thought at the beginning. It's stomach physiology, knowing all the cells and what they do. So that's a good thing to do, to really look at the major points on all the different major organ systems and know what the important cells do. So Kahn's description, or their explanation rather, somatostatin does not have any autocrine activity, i.e. it does not feedback inhibit itself. Well, what is somatostatin? So back in the passage, I had to go to look at what somatostatin does, and I saw in the, what is this, the third paragraph? It's the paragraph right below the very first figure, and they said a marked destruction in somatostatin-producing D cells is noted. So D cells make somatostatin. The decreased presence of D cells, meaning the decreased presence of somatostatin, relative to other cell types within the stomach, is accompanied by a measurable increase in gastric acid production, and a decrease in luminal pH. So you destroy D cells who are producing somatostatin, then something is going to produce gastric acid. So I guess somatostatin inhibits whatever the thing is that produces gastric acid, which lowers the pH. So yeah, the first hint for Kahn is somatostatin does not have any autocrine activity. It does not feedback inhibit itself, which means it just goes out. It's paracrine, goes out, affects what it needs to affect, and that makes sense in the stomach when you kind of always have to keep this balance going. Chief cells are responsible for producing pepsinogen and gastric lipase, not gastric acid, which is the function of parietal cells. Okay, so once again, you couldn't have known this if you just didn't know stomach physiology. I remember the word chief cells and pepsinogen and pepsin, gastric lipase. Okay, so they just said right here in this hint, parietal cells produce gastric acid. So I'm going to go look at my options here, and the first is decreased production of somatostatin, obviously. Leads to, immediately I'm looking at decreased inhibition of parietal cells, possibly. There's a decreased production of somatostatin leads to decreased inhibition of D cells. That doesn't make any sense, I think, because it said that it doesn't have a feedback. Decreased production of somatostatin leads to a decreased inhibition of G cells. I don't know that for sure yet because I don't really know what G cells are. And then decreased inhibition of chief cells. I don't think so. And according to this, that doesn't really make any sense. So let's look at the next hint. With less somatostatin, essentially all other gastric cells are free to operate with relatively greater freedom. So it would seem like parietal cells producing gastric acid is the issue here. Trick is, does somatostatin inhibit parietal cells? Because that's what we're looking for. Next hint, in addition to promoting increased HCl release from parietal cells, this chemical, gastrin from the G cell, it also stimulates parietal cell maturation and growth. Huh. Okay. So gastrin promotes an increased hydrochloric acid release from parietal cells, and it stimulates parietal cell maturation and growth. The correct sequelae is decreased production of somatostatin leads to decreased inhibition of G cells, leads to increased gastrin production, leads to increased numbers of parietal cells. Okay, so somatostatin produced by D cells. So I guess if you wanted to take it one step further, or one step before, it would be as far as the physiology goes. So D cells produce somatostatin, which inhibits G cells from, or maybe just regulates them and controls them. It controls their production of gastrin. Gastrin then goes to mature the parietal cells, which produce gastric acid, as they said before. Okay, so that's really complicated. Stomach, why are you being so complicated? But I can live with that. All right, so that's just purely knowing that physiology, knowing the cell types and what they mean. All right, question 2. Under normal conditions, what stimulates the release of somatostatin from antral D cells? This one was kind of a guess. Based on the way they were describing somatostatin in the passage, I had to guess that when gastric pH goes down too much, that would make sense that you would have something who was described as maintaining a balance in the stomach. You have too low pH, it's gonna probably be produced to raise it. So I got that one right off of just kind of an intuition guess. But it couldn't hurt to know the actual physiology and the content behind it. But that's the key to the MCAT, because you never know what's going to be thrown at you. You have to just be ready to think critically. Okay, question number 3. What is the function of urease? So this was mentioned very briefly. I'm pretty sure urease is an important common enzyme, but I just don't ever work with it or hear about it much. So it's at the bottom of the paragraph directly under the first figure. And it says, second, the organism is capable of producing the enzyme urease, the effect of which is to produce a more neutral environment in the area immediately surrounding the bacterium, which is H. pylori. Okay, produce a more neutral environment. So that is probably the key right there. And then when you look at the answers, yeah, it's all talking about how you're degrading something to create carbon dioxide and something else. So if you want to create a more neutral environment, you're in the stomach, you want to create a base. So if you're going to create CO2 every time, you can just completely block that out. Don't even pay attention to it. So you're between ammonia and urea as the other thing to create. Ammonia would definitely help to create a neutral environment. So then you're down to 2 answer choices. And then what's the only difference between them? Well, one says it catalyzes the degradation of urea to ammonia and CO2. The other one says it catalyzes the formation of urea from ammonia and CO2. And maybe this is a bit of a inconsistency intellectually, but it just makes sense that you would degrade urea into those components rather than forming urea and creating those components afterwards. And I'm sure if I even knew what urea's structure looked like, that would make way more sense. Y'all should learn the structure of urea because it's important. So that is the answer to question number 3. All right, question number 4. What is the best conclusion to draw from the data shown in figure 2? So figure 2, I totally skipped over. It was really big, had some countries and a bunch of dots and lines. But for the purposes in this passage, it really was only important for this one question, and I didn't even read any of the passage that had to do with it because it was kind of just throwing you off from what they asked. So the best conclusion to be drawn when I look at these two things, you see a positive correlation for sure with non-cardia patients, and then you see it kind of all over the place with cardia cancer. So the thing they're going to try to do here, and that I almost fell into the trap of, is make you think that there's a negative correlation with cardia cancer because there's a positive correlation with non-cardia cancer. That's not true. A negative correlation would mean that the what was that, a diamond, kind of horizontal diamond shaped thing, which is representing like the mean of all of those points, that it would be below 1, between 0 and 1. But it's not. It's on 1, which would mean that it averaged out to say that there was no correlation. So on panel A, non-cardiac cancer, it's at around 3, so there's a positive correlation. But on panel B with cardiac cancer, there is no correlation. And that is the answer. It is a positive correlation with non-cardia. Where are you? I need to get through this. Positively, yeah. Positively, yes, there it is. That took a little while. All right. Question number 5. Which of the following characteristics does H. pylori likely demonstrate? Okay. This almost got me. Also, I always read the first sentence or maybe paragraph of these passage questions so I can get an idea of what the whole passage is about. And luckily, I got kind of stuck on the word microaerophilic and thought, that's weird. I've never seen that word before. And I thought about it a good bit. I went down to the bottom and saw all these lovely answer choices for which of the following characteristics does H. pylori likely demonstrate. So a single lipid bilayer, not really, probably not. But I mean, we have no reason to believe that. They didn't tell us gram negative or gram positive. I don't think. Whoa, getting caught right on the air, possibly lying here and showing my stripes of not really reading the passages. Yeah, I don't think they talked about that. Then there's teichoic acids. I didn't even know what that was, so I just forgot about it. Thick peptidoglycan layer. There's peptidoglycan in gram negative and gram positive that utilizes oxygen. That was from that microaerophilic thing, and it paid off. So sometimes paying attention to those keywords can really make a difference.